Welcome. I'm Pam Brown, and it's my honor to serve as Executive Director of Insight Counseling Centers. And I'm grateful that you've joined us this afternoon. This is a casual evening, so if you decide you didn't get enough to eat or if you haven't gotten a plate yet, please feel free at any time to do that and make yourself at home. We are here because Insight is celebrating 40 years of service. And while we are celebrating our past, we also want to look at our future. And we'll be doing that a little bit as well tonight. But first, I'd like to introduce to you Edith Nash, Chair of Insight's Board of Directors.
Thanks, Pam. We are so honored to have you with us here this afternoon. As Pam said, Insight is celebrating 40 years of restoring lives to wholeness, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. We're holding celebrations throughout our 7 centers in 7 counties, and we are really happy that you are here for this one. It's sort of fitting that we have this one for Nashville here at Vine Street, because Vine Street is where we were founded by members of Vine Street and also Emmanuel Baptist Church. You'll hear more about that in a few minutes, but I'd like to invite now Reverend Dr. Thomas Kleiner to the podium.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome on behalf of the congregation. We're thrilled you're here to celebrate this terrific ministry. I have 2 minutes and I don't want to pray for 2 minutes. I thought, what am I going to talk about? And I thought about 40 years. That's it's a nice round number. I remember sometime in the 70s, it occurred to me that in the year 2000, I would be 40 years old. And it was unimaginable. I had no idea what it would feel like to be 40, and I had no idea what it would feel like to be alive in the year 2000. So here we are, 2025. I can tell you what it feels like to be, 64. But the bridge here is we move forward with very little idea of where things are headed, what to expect, where we're going. But we know our purpose, we know what we're about. And now I'm talking, of course, about Insight. Nobody in that group of people that started gathering back in the 80s to talk about the possibility of something like a counseling center, nobody thought it would be what it is today. It was just too far to even see. But what they did see was the vision to be a healing presence in this community and beyond, to participate in the healing, reconciling work of God, really, here in the city, and the dream was, yes, in surrounding counties. And so some of them are here today who were among the founders, not all of them. I think they would be really, really thrilled to see how this baby has grown into a mature organization. So let's pray together. We turn to you, O God, with gratitude. Our hearts are overflowing because we get to look back on 4 decades, more than a generation, of this work in our community. We thank you for your faithful presence in the countless encounters that make this work possible. And we ask that you continue to bless the work of counselors and staff and board members who work tirelessly every day to bring healing to our communities. We ask your blessing on this time tonight, a time of celebration and reminiscing. And we trust that everything we do tonight and in the days ahead will bring glory to you. Amen.
Before I introduce our next speaker, I'd like to invite those of you who are board members, past or present, and staff members, past and present. Would you please stand and be recognized? Thank you so much. Ed and Pat Cole are two of Insight's founders. We're so fortunate that here it is 40 years later, and they're still in our corner. They uplift and encourage us and are an important part of the Insight family. It's my pleasure to invite Ed and Pat Cole to the podium.
Thank you. It's an honor for us to be here. Just a few moments ago, Pat leaned over and said, how many times in your life do you get to celebrate something that you started 40 years ago and it's a continuing success now? And that's the way the two of us feel. Very, very briefly, I'd like to go back and then we'll take two takes on this to how this whole thing started. There are 6 stepping stones that I think we stepped onto and went beyond as we began this. Number 1 is so appropriate, it was pastoral. A group of us received a call from our senior minister at that time, Dan Mosley, who basically said, the pastor cannot do pastoral counseling in the way it needs to be done. We need to have a resource that can do this work in the lives of people. So it began with that pastoral call. Secondly, the second stepping stone is we looked at each other and said, we're at Vine Street. What do we do next? And we then began the process of identifying the cornerstones of what would become Insight Counseling. We looked at church leaders. Pat will talk some more about that. We got incredible help from Liston Mills, who was a member at Emmanuel Baptist and on the faculty at the Vanderbilt Divinity School in pastoral counseling. Ad Scoville, who was a partner and was on the faculty of Vanderbilt Medical School of the Frisk Scoville Clinic, came because we wanted to have the medical profession so that referrals would be valid and this legitimacy would be established. We had Woody Sims, who was the founding partner of Bass, Berry & Sims, largest law firm still today. Woody joined us to provide a legal framework that would help us with our process. And then we put together an incredible group, again, of Vine Street leaders, among whom would be people like Bill Talent and others that some of you might know. And we got to work. Third stepping stone, what in the world is pastoral counseling? And Liston was absolutely essential in helping us understand the many dimensions of pastoral counseling, how it was credentialed, what were best practices, what was it we were trying to do to respond to this pastoral call. Stepping stone number 4, we need a financial framework. This has got to be self-sustaining. How do we set the financial, particularly if we want there to be a sliding fee concept so that people that need help can get it regardless of their ability to pay for it? And then what are the legal constructs that would allow us to do that? Stepping stone number 5, we would like, and this has already been alluded to, we would like this to be ecumenical and multi-site and not limited to Davidson County. So the churches along West End would be a good starting point, and we're a starting point. Westminster, the Temple, Emmanuel Baptist could not have been more helpful to us. David George at that time was terrifically valuable to us. And we put together then the concept that what will start here, but it's got to go there. So 6th stepping stone is, okay, with those behind us, where do we go next? And that's when we turned to Vine Street and went to work.
And I'm going to speak from the congregation's point of view. I was fortunate that year to be chair of the Board of Elders. And at that time, the elders were the legal agents for the church. And so if we were going to use property in any strange way or sell the place or whatever, the elders had to be involved. The first step that we had to do was educating the congregation. We had listening sessions with various groups here in the church. We met with the Board of Elders and talked with them about pastoral counseling. We had to have some financial input from Vine Street to help get things started. And there were strategic people in the congregation who were willing to step forward at that time. Secondly, we had space. And that was something that we as a congregation felt that we could offer. We wanted the counseling that took place there to be the highest quality possible. We wanted the counselors to be licensed. We wanted it to be a sacred place, a safe place where people could come and get help. At the time, we had an old house, the Fitzpatrick House, out behind the church. And a wonderful member of our church, Mayor Jane Bailey, took on the responsibility of converting what was basically Sunday school rooms and a dining room and a kitchen into office space for, at first, the director and a receptionist. And by the time Insight became too big to be here, there were about 4 counselors housed here. And so the congregation, in its wisdom, decided that this was a ministry that we wanted to engage in back at that time. I don't think we had any idea that it would take off the way that it did. We certainly prayed that it would be sustainable, and we worked to sustain it. And we are just so thrilled to see the growth that has occurred there. And it is truly quite remarkable to get to stand here before you and talk about something that didn't even exist before the work began on it. You can finish.
No, no. Well, just one anecdote. Some of you have heard this. During one of the meetings that Pat mentioned, we had a long-time member of the congregation, a great Nashville business history guy, raised his hand and he said, now after we had talked about pastoral counseling, he said, how do you know when people are healed, cured? And, the first reaction is it's not that simple. But the second reaction is that's the kind of question that should be asked, because we were moving into territory that people weren't real familiar with. And the discussion that occurred after that question was extremely valuable. And it just continued. So we thank you all for all that you do to continue this dream, this vision.
And we won't be here when you have your 80th anniversary, but we know that you'll still be going strong.
They asked me, was that too long? It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. Thank you, Ed and Pat. And thank you, Vine Street Christian Church and Emmanuel Baptist Church. We are deeply grateful for the thoughtful and intentional work you did to make sure that people in Nashville and now all across the state, because we also provide telehealth. So to make sure everyone in Tennessee can receive affordable, spiritually informed care. And while we will never forget our past, it's important to look to our future. Times are a little different now than they were 40 years ago. While stress has always been a part of life, it looks a little different now, a little busier, a little more hectic now. And 2 of my colleagues are going to talk to us about topics which will certainly resonate with you. Insight therapist Hailley White is going to talk to us about the ever-evolving internet versus your child. She'll be followed by Insight therapist Josh Medeiros, who will present You're More Anxious Than You Think, and It's Not As Bad As You Fear. Hailley, you're up next. Thank you. Thank you, Josh.
Well, hello. I'm so excited and honored to be a part of just tonight, being a part of a 40th anniversary is pretty cool when you're under the age of 40, so that's good. And they gave me no light topic and talking about the internet, so that's also exciting as well. I became, oh, need to be closer? Gotcha, I can be louder, don't worry. Here I am, can you hear me? Yes, wonderful. Okay, so I came on an Insight in 2021 as an intern, and I was telling some others earlier that my whole thought was that I was gonna work with couples and people older than myself, and that is not at all what happened. I now work with people in their mid-20s, and I also work full-time at an elementary school as a behavior interventionist. So my whole plan for what I thought completely shifted, and I'm so grateful that Insight was a part of that because I believe that's what led me to where I am. So you kind of have an unofficial site in Columbia, which is where I'm at an elementary school. So that's also exciting. So we're talking about the internet, often referred to as the network of networks. It began emerging in the 1970s, but wasn't accessible until the 1990s. It is estimated that more than half of the world's population has access to the internet. I'm a little shocked that number's not higher. We continue to see that number grow as smartphones, smart appliances, smart thermostats, smart lighting systems, smart cars, and I think smart pets might be next. You can figure out your banking information, medical files, and the name of the Beatles' greatest hit in a matter of seconds. The internet is powerful, revolutionary, and always evolving to best fit our perceived needs. We basically can have whatever we want, however we want it, and whenever we want it. There is no denial of the impressive power of the internet, but how does this giant of a machine stack up against your child or your grandchild? The internet that I remember is not the same internet we have now. I remember the sound of dial-up. I remember there only being one centrally located computer in the house. I remember having to wait and even trying to figure out how to get Facebook before it was age appropriate. My parents were learning with me how to best utilize the internet, and the pace, while it was faster, wasn't the pace that we are currently at. Even the most diligent of parents or caretakers are unable to keep up with the swinging door of the updates on the internet. A life without the internet for yourself, let alone your child, is almost impossible. So, if we can't get rid of the internet, which is not really the answer anyways, we must figure out how to partner with it in a way that creates healthy boundaries and attachment. So how does attachment align with the internet? A safe and secure attachment creates the frame in which individuals' worlds are formed. To create a safe and secure attachment with your child, they need to know that they can feel secure in your presence, express their own needs and wants. They also need to know that they can try things, and regardless of the outcome, they can return back to your refuge. Secure attachment doesn't mean they won't do the wrong things. In fact, doing the wrong thing and being able to talk about it is a pillar of secure attachment. In Jonathan Haidt's latest book, Anxious Generation, he says, the two biggest mistakes we've made: overprotecting children in the real world, where they need to learn from vast amounts of direct experience, and underprotecting them online, where they are particularly vulnerable during puberty. Kids are not taking the same risk in the real world that they are taking in the virtual world. Working with teens and children, I can tell you they are driven to find a way to get on their device or the internet. Every day I have a kid at school ask me if he can have my phone. I say, nope, you can't. But it's crazy how they're terrified to take any risks socially or academically versus what they do online. So instead of them finding their own way virtually, we can help our children by creating opportunities for them to take in the real world. And this doesn't have to be complex. I recently saw a video where a mom gave her son money to go order food from inside of Chick-fil-A. He was probably around 6 or 7. She had prepped him on what to order and what to do if anything went wrong. The child came back afterwards and told his mom that even though his knees shook, he was proud of his accomplishments and asked to be able to do it again. Like I told you all, I have the wonderful privilege of working in an elementary school as a behavior interventionist. We recently had a talent show. We had all sorts of talents. We had poetry readers, singers, dancers. We even had a kid who solved Rubik's Cubes in a timed manner. It was pretty cool. And I got the chance to be able to prep those kids on performing in front of their families and their friends. And it was so cool to see the pride in their eyes once they got off that stage, because they had done something that was so hard. But what was even cooler was following that, we saw a bump in their academics. So they were able to take this risk socially that also led to developments academically as well. So taking risks like this would be an encouragement in their academics, and helping them find calculated adventures offline could be as simple as encouraging them to order from a restaurant, walking to a neighbor's house to play, or trusting them to find something in a grocery store all on their own. Another quote from Jonathan Haidt: "We are embodied creatures. Children should learn how to manage their emotions or their bodies in the physical world before they start spending large amounts of time in the virtual world." So, helping our children take calculated risk in the physical world so they aren't taking unobserved ones in the virtual world is one way to prepare your child. Another way is to look at your own internet usage. This is a little bit tougher. So how are you approaching the internet? How are you approaching your phone time? Are you someone that's on their phone or device while at dinner or at family events? Do we want the thing for our kids to remember the most about us, that we were absorbed into the virtual world of someone else instead of being physically present with our kids in their most formative years? It's also really hard to hold an argument against your children about why they shouldn't have phones if you're on yours all the time. Just gonna tell you. And they'll argue really hard. So you can challenge the current status quo by having device-free meals, days, or trips. Be intentional about setting the phone aside when your children are present. We are all born with our eyes looking for other eyes to be looking back at us. This can't be done if your device is blocking the eyes of your child. My last suggestion for you actually comes from local therapist Sissy Goff. I heard her talk on a recent podcast on her recommendations to parents when it came to giving them access to phones. She said, don't be the first, because you don't want to be the one that's trying to figure it all out before everybody else does. But she also said, don't be the last, because in some ways you do want to help your child socially. Her advice was to be the next to last. Kind of gotta watch that a little bit. But yeah, be the next to last so that you've seen how other people have put things in place. And then you're also not the total last, so your kid doesn't blame you probably in their 30s or 40s when they're having to go to therapy. That's fine. So part of also one of those guidelines that you can implement is not having secrets, meaning you're able to access your child's phone if you need to, which sounds like a little bit of an overstep, but it can also be a form of secure attachment because you have that power, but you're not going to use it, and your child can know that. Some other outside resources I just want to give you all is obviously Jonathan Haidt's new book, Anxious Generation. There's also an organization called Protect Young Eyes, which works to equip parents, schools, and government with data and preventative measures to help protect, of course, those young eyes we all cherish so much. I also recommend any content from Sissy Goff and Dave Thomas, who are the executive directors of Daystar Counseling. They've each written books on how to raise emotionally strong boys and girls. Here's the deal. I could give you all the scary statistics behind the internet and your child. And there's a lot of them about child sexploitation is on the rise and about how it's attacking your data and your time. But I think the point is to raise children that feel empowered to navigate the ever-evolving internet with your support and wisdom. This happens through helping your child take healthy risks now in the physical world, you leading by example, and not being the first or the last, but the next to last. Thank you all so much for coming tonight.
I want to invite you all to close your eyes for a second. I'm talking about anxiety, and so you don't have to worry because I'm the one up here, not you. I want you to think of a time when you've been listening to a piece of music. Maybe it's classical, maybe otherwise. But at some point during that piece of music, you recognized it's too loud, and you reached up and you had to turn it down. It starts off with some simple melody, and then it evolves, and maybe a counter melody or a harmony comes in. And maybe some percussion and a bass line. Maybe it's a guitar. Maybe distortion is added and the tempo increases. And even though none of the instruments are playing any louder, the simple addition of more makes it feel more, makes it feel at a certain point overwhelming enough that you have to make an adjustment. You can open your eyes again. Anxiety isn't always some dramatic panic attack that we might see portrayed. I'm a little taller than you. might not be some dramatic panic attack, right, that we see portrayed in media or we think that is what's necessary to go seek help about. The truth is that anxiety exists on a spectrum from somewhere between rest, helpful, healthy stress that motivates us to do the things that we know that need to get done, to panic, to eventually just shut down because our systems won't allow ourselves to override that anxiety anymore. It shows up in little ways like perfectionism, the drive to do more because we feel like in the face of adversity, we're called to prove ourselves. But we fail to draw the boundary and understand the line about where that is. It might show up in procrastination, avoiding tasks because of an underlying worry about failure. Or maybe because there's so much anxiety in our life already that we need a deadline tomorrow to increase the anxiety and the value of doing that work now instead of the week ahead of time. Maybe it shows up in people pleasing, a constant need for external validation, maybe driven by a social anxiety or a fear that my opinion or taste won't be accepted by those around me. And so I need to fold or be amenable in order to be loved or accepted or seen. Maybe it shows up in things like rumination, this endless loop of thoughts, maybe about things that have already happened or things that are going to happen. Like you have to go give a talk in front of a room full of people this afternoon. Maybe you have to have a difficult conversation with someone you love or a regular conversation with a difficult person. There's no need necessarily, right, to have that conversation twice, once in your head and then once in real life. You can just have that conversation. The other, and I think maybe more subtle one that we don't always associate with this is the physical symptoms. Tightness in your shoulders, the stomach issues, the fidgeting, the nail picking or biting, or the inability to sit still or focus on something for any extended amount of time without checking something else in order to help divert our attention and alleviate the stress of the focus. It's easy to think of all these things and think, I, or probably more likely someone I know, suffers with this, struggles with this. And if we do, it's easy to think, well, I'm not the only one and this is normal. And I want to be the one to tell you tonight that negative emotions, suffering, struggling, in no case is normal. Normalized doesn't mean we make it okay. It's not normal. Suffering isn't normal. If it was, we would have bred it out a long time ago. We wouldn't experience it as a negative emotion anymore. Suffering is universal. It's not normal. And so why care? Why not just brush it off? It's not killing us. It's helping us to move and to do. Carrying around even a little bit of extra anxiety or stress, anxiety being our internal reaction to external or internal stressors, reduces our ability to experience joy. By suppressing negative emotion, we necessarily have to suppress the equal and opposite positive emotion. Because if we expect to be happy and it doesn't happen, we might get sad. And so I won't expect to be happy to protect myself from feeling sad, as a basic example. It causes burnout or exhaustion. It takes energy to worry. It results in missed opportunities in our avoidance behaviors and procrastination because we spend that time not doing something, but not really doing anything else more productive or useful or helpful or growth or developing in ourselves. And I think one of the reasons that insight exists is it delays our seeking help. By casting off our negative emotions as normal and everybody deals with it, we don't reach for the help that we could use until we need it. And there's a difference between could use and needing. Negative emotions are not bad. They're just useful signals. They point to the fact that something's not right. And if we can view it as a signal, not an actual sign of danger, it's a helpful way to move around. Our brains misinterpret it. When we recognize that there's nothing to fear, maybe we learn to relabel the emotion we're experiencing not as anxiety, but excitement or anticipation or Twitter-pated, whatever the emotion may be. Learning to speak about our emotions in a granular, specific way can be really helpful in fighting the resistance that we sometimes feel of admitting that we're stressed or feeling anxious. And treating those negative emotions like anxiety as just good information, maybe valuable information about our own values or where our boundaries are or maybe should be, or maybe that something is just important. So to begin doing this, we can cultivate in ourselves and help others around us, cultivate self-awareness. If you recognize that when you're stressed, you remember that it's time to take a deep breath to try and calm down because the tension is built up to such a point. I often say this, that if the only time you take a deep breath is when you're stressed, then taking deep breaths is going to stress you out. It's important to do the good things when we're not in a state of needing it. We practice it when it doesn't feel like our life is on the line, so that when it's time to do it, it actually means something and it taps into something deeper. Name it. I've said before, learn to differentiate anxiety from excitement or anticipation or genuine fear or surprise or dread of conflict. There's a difference. And the more specific you can be about what it is that you're experiencing and how those things show up in you, the better off you'll be in being able to deal with anxiety and all of its daughters. Challenge your anxious thoughts. If you find yourself arguing with a significant other or spouse or partner or friend or family member in your head, ask yourself, I don't know what they would say. And you might quickly respond, because we've been married for 40 years. Of course I know what they're going to say. But in truth is, more often than not, vulnerability begets compassion. Take the little steps, cultivate small acts of courage and the opportunity to take them. Step out of your comfort zone just enough to prove to yourself that things aren't as bad as you thought they would be. It's not as bad as you fear, but also to increase and stretch your window of tolerance to be able to deal with anxiety in a healthier way, so that the could use help gets more and more the case than absolutely need it. And then finally, seek support. Look for people around you, friends and family or professionals who you can be vulnerable with about the things that bring you angst. Not so that they can fix it, so that they can know, so that they can relate, so they can listen, so you aren't the only one facing it. Understanding and accepting our feelings, we can learn to navigate them more effectively. It leads to greater self-compassion, greater relatability and compassion for others, and overall in a richer life. How many of us would like to spend less time worrying and more time doing the things we're worried about? When you think of that piece of music that we began with, understanding that just because you might be standing there in front of the orchestra, maybe you're the composer here, just because they're all looking at you doesn't mean they all need to play their instruments at the same time or at the same volume. And setting the boundaries and understanding what melodies and counter melodies and harmonies play best in your own life and in your own flourishing, can you come to understand that anxiety's place should be a thing of your past. Thank you.
Got so caught up in his talk. I was supposed to be up here. Thank you so much, Hailley and Josh. I think we can all agree that the talks that you gave, the information that you gave was both interesting and helpful. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to invite to the podium Reverend Stephen Merriweather, who's the pastor of Emmanuel Baptist. Stephen will close the formal part of our gathering. Afterwards, please feel free to continue enjoying the refreshments, and the staff would love to show you Insight's counseling office, which is upstairs. Thank you.
I think it is Wendell Berry who describes that satisfaction that we derive from hard work done well. And the founders, and the dream, and those who have cultivated this along the way, and those who are presently making Insight happen day to day, I pray that you take in and acknowledge, name that satisfaction, and give thanks for its presence in our lives. 40 years ago, I was doing a second-year residency at Winston-Salem, North Carolina Baptist Hospital, Bowman Gray School of Medicine, in CPE. And part of our training, we also did counseling training, pastoral counseling training. And the psychiatrist who supervised us, Dan Israel, was an imposing presence. We all wanted to impress. And I will remember one colleague in a seminar one day asking Dr. Israel, what is the definition of mental health? We were waiting for something profound and had our pens, pencils, and he said, tax-paying citizen. And over the years, that has become more of a reality to me, that if you're paying taxes, you're holding a job. And if you're holding a job, you have that modicum of wellness about you that you can function each day. And of course, Insight's goal is to enhance that. We want to see every child of God flourish. And flourishing entails more than just holding a job and paying your taxes. But sometimes that's the foundation. And so with that, I commend all of you who are in the trenches day after day, working with people, walking along beside of them, trusting God's Spirit to guide you in your training and what that individual brings to the moment as well. So I will close with a blessing, and that'll be my last words. Gracious God, you take long looks ahead, and we're grateful for the view 40 years ago that is now taken on flesh, and the dream that has been realized in many ways. Thank you for the excellent leadership along the way, the men and women who've made things happen and work, the people who gave and gave sacrificially. So I ask now that you bless each individual staff with Insight, that they have each day a full measure of what they need, that you continue to bless the lives of those men, women, and children who come to Insight and trust us for help. All these things and more, I ask your blessings and your peace upon us in your good and gracious name.